All right, let's get into this. This week, the name on the marquee has got to be Max Blessed Holloway, who this past weekend, in front of 10,000 strong at the Singapore Indoor Stadium in Singapore, defeated Chan Sung Jung, the Korean Zombie, by knockout. The official time, 23 seconds of round number 3. Omar, I have talked enough. Let me get you in here. Give me your take at how this fight played out and how it ultimately finished.
This was very sad for me, man. I texted you guys about it once it had happened. I've been calling for Zombie to retire for a long time, and I think once it finally happened, I was not prepared for the emotions that were about to take over. Yeah. I will say, especially considering a lot of the fights that he's had recently, this is probably one of the better performances I've seen from him in recent memory. With that being said, Holloway, I thought, won every round up until that point. There was that third round stoppage came pretty early. I think Zombie had enough of this bullshit and was just like, fuck it. If we're going to go, we're going to go. If you're going to go, I'm going to make you go out right now. And he just rolled the dice. He was not trying to go 5 rounds. It was always fun to watch Zombie. I've been watching him since WEC. So it's been forever at this point. And it's hard not to be a fan of his. And, watching the love that man gets in his country or in his region where he's from, I thought was fantastic. Everybody chanting Zombie on his way out during, listening to the walkout song. It's another one of those iconic walkout songs that when you hear it now, that song has completely different meaning to me now at this point than I think what it was originally intended for when it was made. And it carries so much emotional value behind this man and all of his walkouts, all of his fights. And then to watch him lose, get the respect from Holloway, and Holloway we'll talk about in a minute, just showing him all the respect throughout that fight, even during the bad times, not getting super crazy and taking advantage and wanting to make sure that he didn't have to inflict any extra damage on Zombie if he didn't have to. It was emotional all the way around, you know what I mean? And then you also had Holloway coming in with the weight of Hawaii and their recent devastation on his shoulders, and it was a lot. It was a lot.
It was a lot.
As far as the fight itself was concerned, I thought Max started a little slow, if we're being honest. I thought the first round, he usually picks it up a little bit, but I think he was showing a lot of respect to Zombie, knowing the issues that Zombie can potentially bring if you give it to him, if you allow him to do it. And Max Holloway didn't seem like the type to go for a takedown, and when you leave Zombie on his feet, that's where he's most dangerous. So he was very measured in the first round. I thought he did take it pretty well, used his jab pretty well. Once we got to the second round, that's where we started getting crazy. Even in the first round, I should say, they both rocked each other back and forth. So it was a crazy first round, but second round got even more wild. Max dropped him with a 1-2, and then he just, kind of like I said, just stood over him, checked to see if he was out. He wasn't out. Immediately dove in for an anaconda choke and tried to get that sunk in. Zombie fought his way through it, and then the fight continued. And by the time we got to the third round, man, like I said, Zombie seemed like he had enough of this shit, and he was out to kill or be killed, and he did not win that coin flip. So props to Max Holloway for showing that his hands have power and that he's definitely one to knock somebody out, because he has been getting a lot of criticism, landing 400 strikes and not knocking anybody out. But I don't really see it that way, and I think he showed everybody here that he does have power. And Zombie had a hell of a career. Unfortunately, he never got that gold wrapped around his waist, but he will always be a staple to those who love MMA. So good career on Zombie, and he will be missed.
Dude, you're right. It was a good fight up until that point. And the Korean Zombie, man, he, if anything, he has a talent of making all of his fights into his kind of fight. It's not that once it becomes his kind of fight, he has like a 100% win rate. It's gonna be a scrap. He's gonna make it a bit of a brawl, and win or lose, that's what he's gonna do. He's like an NBA team that lives by the 3 and dies by the 3. So he's like, live by the firefight, die by the firefight. Like, that's just what it's gonna be.
Yeah,
and he's either gonna get the better of it, or he's himself is gonna get caught, and consequences be damned, man.
Yeah.
But that's why he's so beloved, because he is an action fighter. He brings the heat. He brings the action. He brings the pace. And I think that's why he has brought a lot of eyeballs to the sport in and of himself, especially in his corner of the world. And he's a fighter that not just purists love, but he probably has attracted quite a bit of the casual fan to the sport as well. He has a great nickname. In fact, he pretty much goes by his nickname to the point where on the publicity materials for most of the fights that he has headlined, it's not Holloway versus Chan Sung.
Jung. Mm-hmm.
It's Holloway versus Zombie, or the Korean Zombie. So that's cool, man. He's a legend, man. He will be sorely, sorely missed. It's like, damn, the Korean Zombie is not in the sport anymore. That sucks. It does suck.
It does suck. But I'm also happy, right? Like, I don't want him taking any more damage.
Yeah.
I think to his point, he's not trying to be a number 10, a number 15, a gatekeeper, or anything like that. He was always trying to be champion, for better or worse. And I think now he's gotten to the point where I think he's realized it might not happen. The opportunities aren't going to come. He's not beating the guys he needs to in order to do that. So I think he's just I think he's accepted that. I think his time has passed.
With this loss, he finishes his pro career at 17 victories and 8 defeats. He has never lost more than 2 fights in a row, believe it or not. Yeah, I mean, he's not going out on the most terrible skid. Who's somebody who I'm thinking of? Somebody like Dawkins. Dawkins is now out of the UFC, but he lost like 4 or 5 in a row.
Did he lose him in a row?
Chris
Jesus
Dawkins?
Christ.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew he lost a lot.
That's unfortunate. So before this, he had really, Korean Zombie really had 2 really nasty losses as of late, other than the Yair knockout, which was the most insane thing.
Right, and that fight was back and forth. That fight was absolutely wild up until the final second of the entire fight. So yes,
right, exactly. But again, it was like Chan Sung Jung being like, "I'm going to make this into a Chan Sung Jung fight. I'm just going to charge at him." And I guess he didn't count on the sheer dynamism of Yair's striking. And before Yair, his last knockout was against Jose Aldo, and that was a kind of a freak thing. With what did his shoulder dislocate?
His shoulder popped out in the middle of the fight.
Because of the kick.
I can't remember if it was because of the kick itself or I can't remember exactly what happened, but I do remember that his shoulder ended up popping out after, and then he kept kicking the shoulder once it had popped out. Once Zombie had shown that the shoulder was out, he just kept kicking it. So I can't remember if a kick had caused it or if he just kept kicking it after it already had popped out. But yeah, that fight went to hell in a handbasket once that happened.
Yeah. So Korean Zombie, he only lost 5 fights in the UFC, and 4 out of those 5 he was finished by Jose, Yair, Volk, and now Max sees him out the door.
We also have to remember that Korean Zombie gave up some decent years in a very short career that can be MMA by going to the military for his country, which is a mandatory thing over there. So he didn't really have a choice in the matter, frankly. But I think the culture over there, they all want to, be a part of that process. I think throughout their life, I think it's a sort of patriotic pride that they have in joining the military for their 2 or 3 years of service. I can't remember what it is.
Yeah.
But those are, 2 or 3 years is really doesn't seem that long in the grand scheme of things. But in a very short window, that can be becoming MMA champ. In a sport that is not forgiving when it, Mike knows, doesn't like old people, so he gave up some critical years there, and who knows what would have happened if he never went into that military career. That's
a great point. And his gap was from 2013 to 2017, I believe.
Yeah.
So, happy trails to the Korean Zombie, Chan Sung Jung. And now he's retired from MMA, and he's only 36 years old. I always wonder what guys do post-fight career. I'm sure he has many options. I mean, he is pretty famous. I'm sure he can kind of tour around and get paid lots of money at different training academies to do guest spots and all that kind of stuff.
Zombie better release a fucking album before it's all said and done. My man is a singing prowess.
He sings? What?
Oh, he does sing. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Korean Zombie's got pipes on him.
No.
He does.
I had to find this.
You got to Google it. Google it later. Don't
will.
get stuck in the rabbit hole.
I'm looking on his Wikipedia. He's appeared on a television show called Fighter as a mentor, but he is also in a music video in 2021.
He's about it, man. And I can imagine he could probably get a gym open and all that kind of stuff. He's got a really big name to him. I think he'll be perfectly fine in that regard. And he's probably made a shit ton of money. The man's gotten a few performance bonuses out of his career too. So
yeah, but he doesn't have the longest tenured career. He's only 17-8. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
He doesn't even have. He has 25 bouts. 25. But you're right. Especially as of late, he has headlined quite a few. Let's see. Let's count this out. One, because like other than pay-per-views, wow. Yeah, he's a headliner. Oh my God. Almost every fight in his UFC career, he headlined.
He was already a big name when he came out of the WEC.
That's true. He headlined.
I don't actually think Chan Sung Jung was ever like below a top 10 rating.
So he has had to make a decent amount of money. Once
I'd imagine
from
so.
From 2012 on, did he headline? Yes, he did. He headlined against Poirier was a fight night headline. Well, UFC on Fuel was a fight night headline. Then UFC 163 against Jose was a headline. And then UFC Fight Night Bermudez versus Korean Zombie. Then UFC Fight Night Korean Zombie versus Yair. Then UFC Fight Night Moicano versus Korean Zombie. Then UFC Fight Night Frankie Edgar versus Korean Zombie. Then UFC Fight Night Ortega versus Korean Zombie. Then UFC on ESPN Korean Zombie versus Dan Ige. Then he headlined 273 against Volk. And now he headlined this fight night. The man is a headliner. He's had to have made a decent amount of money.
And again, if you look at all of these asterisks by them, right? They're all of them, or most of them are performance bonuses, fight of the night bonuses, right? Like he racks up money, this man, with the way he fights.
Yeah, that's true.
He will be missed. He will be missed.
Let's talk about now the winner of this bout, who did win in spectacular fashion. Max blessed Holloway. Let's see. Max, where could he go from here? He has now won back-to-back fights once again, defeating Arnold Allen and now Korean Zombie. What do you think is next for him, bud?
I mean, I don't know what you can do with Max Holloway, honestly, at this point, man, because he's going to continue to beat everybody in that division, it seems like, until he gets another crack at Volk. Volk right now is going to be fighting Ilia Topuria, I would imagine, right? I think that fight is... I don't think it's booked yet because I think Volk was still... Or is it booked? I can't remember now. Balls.
Topuria?
Yeah, no, I don't think it's booked yet. But I would imagine that that's the fight that they're looking to make at this point, is Volk versus Topuria. So it's difficult to say what Max Holloway needs to do at this point. I guess, like I said, maybe run it back with Brian Ortega. It's been a little bit at this point. Maybe he can fight Arnold Allen. No, he just fought Arnold Allen and got his ass beat. Yeah, I'm not really sure. There is the Giga Chikadze now that Giga has come off of a loss, but he's still a little, just came off of a win against Alex Caceres. But he's a little bit away at this point from Max's position, so it wouldn't, from that point of view, it wouldn't make sense. So there might be some options here and there, but it's, I think at this point he really is shooting for the title, and I think we just need to see what happens with Volk.
I mean, there being a fourth fight is not completely unprecedented. Then we just see Figueiredo versus Moreno fight a fourth time. And, dude, that quartet of fights was pretty spectacular. I will say I have found so far the trilogy between Volk and Max, while, I mean, you can't get any more high level than that. I have found it a bit frustrating. I don't know. It's like they're both so good they negate each other. They like cancel each other out. I mean, the first two fights were razor close. I think Volk won very much more convincingly on scorecards in their third bout. But I'm looking right here. The first one was a very close what was a UD for Volk, but I think people thought Max won, and then the second one was a split. So what do you do? What do you do?
I mean, if it makes sense, there's at some point you can't really deny the need for that fight if Max Holloway is destroying everybody in that division. It doesn't make any sense. Like, you have to run that fight back again. The real problem is that these Max is always continuously at the top of the division, that everybody is going to end up jumping him until we get to the point where Volk has basically run through most of that division as well, and then you kind of have to see again who the best guy in that division is.
Yeah.
But you can't keep running them back to back to back, which I think, was what was happening with Moreno and Figueiredo. They were kind of doing back to back fights. That I think you can't do at Volk and Holloway. But running a fourth one back after they've both simultaneously probably beaten 2 or 3 guys from that division, it does make a bit of sense.
Max Holloway has only lost to 3 people at 145 pounds. Alexander Volkanovski, Dustin Poirier twice, and Conor McGregor and Dennis Bermudez. What did I say, 3? That's 4, right?
Yeah, it's 4. Mm-hmm.
Conor and Bermudez were a lifetime ago. They were literally a decade ago.
That was no wrestling Max, is what that was.
That's true, too. So do you think he could go up? There was once upon a time where he was going to fight a man named Khabib.
Yeah, he can definitely go up, but I don't think going up means not cutting weight. I think Max Holloway would have to change his physique to a certain extent, and I think he'd have to put on muscle. He'd have to get bigger. And if he goes up to 155, I don't think he needs to plan on going back down to 145 ever again.
I think he could. I mean, the man is what, 5'10", 5'11", listed at?
Yeah, but the dudes that are at... What happened to him at 155?
Yeah, Poirier did kind of handle him.
And Poirier was a 145-pounder, so it's not like they were,
At
shades away from each other at one time, right? But not then, because Poirier had filled out, had gotten bigger, had changed his frame for 155.
Right.
Max Holloway is going to need to do the same thing. His size advantage is not going to work as well at 155 as it does at 145. So he just needs to put on a little bit more stock in his barrel there.
I would love to see him fight Conor again at some point, but I don't think that's ever going to happen. We mentioned that in our chat. But Conor, talk about changing your frame. Conor's trying to compete at light heavyweight. So,
I mean, if he keeps fucking taking whatever he's taking, he's going to get there quick.
Yeah, he's going to host the Ultimate Fighter against I don't know,
Brock Lesnar,
some middleweight or somebody next. He's going to do it with Sean Strickland next or somebody like that.
Oh my God, could you imagine?
All right, let's for the sake of time, let's move on to the co-main event, unless there's anything else you want to say about either Max or Zombie.
Yeah, I'm all I'm going to say, man, is Zombie's a legend. If you guys don't know, if you guys came into the game late, definitely go back and do your homework on this man. He is a legend, fantastic to watch. One of the 3 twister submission holders in the UFC's history. I will miss him dearly. I know I've had some harsh thoughts about where his career has needed to go for the last couple fights, but that's only because I hate watching him take a ton of damage. I'm such a big fan of him that watching him lose the way he had been losing at the time was super difficult to take. So I'm glad this fight was more competitive. It was definitely more entertaining to watch as far as the back and forth, and actually Chance and Jung putting on a really good performance in that sense. But I'm glad it's over. I'm glad he's gonna spend the rest of the time, I think, at this point with his family and doing other things and staying healthy. So good for him.
All right, let's move on to the co-main event of this UFC Fight Night that once again went down in the Singapore Indoor Stadium in Singapore. The light heavyweight division, Anthony Smith gets back in the win column with a split decision victory over Ryan Spann. The scorecards read 29-28 and 29-28 for Smith, and Spann earning his own 29-28. Pretty close fight, I'll say, and I think nobody was more confused than Ryan Spann. That very confused look he had on his face when the scores were read off there. What did you make of this fight?
This was This was kind of a frustrating fight for me, if we're being honest. I thought that Ryan Spann had opportunities there to really take over, and I thought he was being super tentative for no real reason that I could see. I thought Anthony Smith was also a little tentative. I thought he was a little bit slower on the shots, but I think the difference was that Anthony Smith was a bit more. He was a bit more active, even though he was moving around. He was moving laterally. He was kind of not against the cage, but definitely not taking control of the center of the octagon. But Ryan Spann just didn't do enough, and I feel like that continues to be the goddamn story of Ryan Spann. Is there's always opportunities for him to have done more. I thought the first round went to Anthony Smith, and again, there just wasn't a ton being done in general, so I think Anthony Smith just took it based on that. And then once we got to the second round, I mean, Ryan Spann kind of beat the shit out of Anthony Smith a little bit. Broke his face. Anthony Smith's eye was blown to hell. And he was taking a lot of damage. And to Anthony Smith's credit, man, I mean, he toughed it out. He got back up and he kept moving. And it just seemed like Ryan Spann had opportunities to really push it there to try to go for a finish. And then once we got to the third round, I think fatigue, I think it set in for both of these guys. Anthony Smith, God only knows what he was pushing through at that third round. But it was too close. I thought that third round was way too close of a round for the momentum that Ryan Spann had. And, you know, you can give credit to Anthony Smith for being tough and pushing through, but you also got to give a little bit of shit, I think, to Ryan Spann for allowing that to occur. I thought he took relatively no damage to his face at that point. He'd taken quite a bit of damage to his legs. But I thought he had more opportunity to throw more, be more active, have Anthony Smith on the back foot. He does not like being hit. Anthony Smith is one of those fighters that when he gets hit, he fucking doesn't like it. Like, he reacts not great to it. And if you pepper him up enough, he will back up. He'll throw a couple shots here and there just because he's tough and he's not going to go out like that. But at the same time, I thought there were definitely opportunities for Smith to put it on him, and he just didn't. And his reaction at the end of the fight, as if he had taken that fight handedly, I thought was really annoying to me as well. Yeah. So I found that fight to be super frustrating on multiple different fronts. But that's sometimes how it goes. But again, I had Smith winning the first round, Spann winning the second round. I had Spann winning the third round, but I mean that last round was literally a coin flip. So you could tell me you got Smith, and I'd be fine with it.
I think I did. I mean, Spann. I'm sorry. I meant Spann. I thought you said Spann. My bad. I was with Spann. I was with him I was also making a similar kind of a quizzical look of kind of like, I kind of feel like they got this one a little wrong.
I just didn't think it was. I didn't think it was a robbery. I didn't think it was that clear of a decision. Yeah, I didn't think it was that clear of a decision for him to look that bamboozled by it. You know what I mean?
But on the other hand, it was too close of a fight. I felt that for Smith to react the way he did.
Oh, I agree. I don't disagree with that at all. I feel like had Ryan Spann done just a bit more, I don't think it would have gone in that direction. But he left so many things open that it made it difficult for the judges to know exactly who to give it to. He gave Anthony Smith way more opportunities in that third round than he should have. He let him off the hook way more than he should have. There was too much dead time for somebody as injured and compromised as Anthony Smith was to just let him coast in that round. He could have done more. He should have done more. Hopefully, maybe this is the one that shows Ryan Spann he needs to do more in those fights.
It wasn't quite like a Paddy Pimblett reaction after he got the win over Jared Gordon, where, like, what? Like, it wasn't quite as obnoxious as that, but it was still kind of like you would expect a guy to be a little more, what's the word? Contrite in victory, to kind of be like, oof, I got this one, like a little more. I don't know, but hey, I'm not the guy that's in there. Maybe, I mean, Anthony Smith. Give the guy his due. He's a high level, very, very skilled guy, super well rounded. So, is it possible that there are things that he felt and saw in there where he felt like he was in control of the fight that we all could not see? Possibly. That being said, let's turn to these rankings and talk about where the Lionheart, Mr. Anthony Smith, can go from here. What do you think at 205?
Jesus, I don't even know. He's another one with what the hell do you do with Anthony Smith at this point? Usually I have these all written down, and I did not get to them. But he's fought so many guys now. I mean, this is the second time with him fighting Ryan Spann at this point.
He's been around for a minute, man. He has fought pretty much everybody. Okay, what rematch?
Yeah, right. Has he fought Krylov yet? Somehow I don't think him and Nikita Krylov have fought yet. And I think Nikita has a fight. Nikita Krylov.
You know what? I got a name. I got a crazy idea. A guy who is now not too far away from Anthony Smith's spot and who just had another nice victory in Khalil Roundtree.
That's a good one.
You think he could welcome? You think he could welcome Khalil Roundtree to the top 10?
I think if Khalil Roundtree can keep Anthony Smith on his feet without getting taken down, I think Khalil Roundtree probably kills Anthony Smith.
Because I think it's time. I mean, the UFC now has Roundtree ranked 11th, and Anthony Smith is number 8.
Yeah,
let's go.
The only thing is you'd be giving Anthony Smith somebody lower than him off of a win.
Just a couple spots though.
Yeah, you could also. I was thinking about Nikita Krylov, especially because they hadn't fought yet, but it would also be kind of the same thing for Krylov. Both of them, Krylov and Smith, both recently now have just beaten Ryan Spann. So,
that's great.
They might be good to fight together, but I don't mind the Khalil Roundtree one. I just don't know if it makes super sense for Anthony Smith to take the fight, but I'm fucking here for it if it happens.
Oh, for sure. I'm a Khalil guy, as we know, so I'm excited for him to get into the top 10 because, like, the world is his oyster going up into the rankings. Like, I don't think he's fought anybody in the top 10. Correct me if I'm wrong. So yeah, but your point is well taken that I can understand for Anthony Smith coming off of a win, being at the 8th spot, being top 10, not wanting to fight a guy out of the top 10, having just beat a guy. But that being said, he did just snap a 2-fight losing streak. So he only, is now 1 win. It's not like he has won 3 in a row and he's going to fight. No. You know what I mean? So, but hey, I'm not a matchmaker.
Yeah. And even this win was, relatively questionable, in that sense. It's not like it was the best performance ever.
What about Ryan Spann? You think maybe he could be a decent matchup for Khalil Roundtree? Because now the UFC has them ranked 10th and 11th, respectively. Talk about knocking on the door.
Yeah, I mean, that is also a good fight as well. If they're not going to give him Anthony Smith, they could definitely give him Ryan Spann. Man, I've been super high on what's his name? On Khalil Roundtree lately that I just think the man just probably kills the two of them.
Yeah, man. Muay Thai.
Great fight.
Okay, let's move on. Featherweight division. Giga Chikadze gets it done over Alex Bruce Leroy Caceres by unanimous decision. A shutout on the scorecards, 30-27 from all 3 judges for Giga, Ninja, Chikadze. What did you make of this performance from the stand-up fighter, the karate fighter in Chikadze?
There are fights every now and again that if you've watched UFC for long enough and you still hear Mike Goldberg's voice in your head every now and again, this was one of those fights where I heard him in my head go, "So you wanna be an ultimate fighter?" Because those kicks from Giga Chikadze are one of those kicks that you're like, "No, I'm good, bro. You could keep that shit. I'm gonna go sit down somewhere."
Yep.
Those kicks look fucking terrible. And if you've never felt a kick before, if you've never felt a shin, like a pure, unpadded shin across your arm or across your belly or across whatever, you have no idea the pain that comes with it.
I can only imagine.
It sucks. I tapped somebody. I checked somebody's leg once. We were training recently at a seminar that I was at a couple weeks ago, or like a week or so ago, and I checked somebody's kick. We had no shin guards on because that was not the drill. I was not supposed to be checking anybody's kicks.
Oops.
I was supposed to be catching the kick. But I'm so conditioned at this point to check a kick when I'm not thinking about it that I checked it, and we went shin to shin.
Fuck.
That was fucking awful. And we didn't even blast each other. I mean,
It
we
hurt
literally
both of you?
we tapped each other. Like if you took two metal things and just went bing,
Yeah, man.
that's
It's bone on
oh
bone.
my God. Oh my God. I've had a bruise for like a week and a half, my guy. It's the worst.
You said
The
I think
feeling
you
was
mentioned
terrible.
this. You mentioned this in our chat. You said the guy like got really mad at you?
No, that was another dude that threw a kick at me and I checked it and he got hurt.
Wait, I thought you
That's
just
not
said
my
that.
No, I checked somebody's kick and I got hurt
This time.
the first time. And then
Okay.
after that, I trained with another gentleman while my leg was already hurt. He kicked me, I checked the kick, and he hurt himself. That's not my problem.
He's the one who got the worst of it, you're saying.
Correct. That's not my problem. That's the point of a leg kick. That's the point of checking leg kicks. So that's not my problem. But yeah, me checking them shin to shin was not great. So I go through all that to have said that Giga Chikadze is a beast. Alex Caceres, having gone through 3 rounds, eating the shit that he ate, having broken his forearm in the first round, where there were maybe 2 or 3 points in that fight where I thought, oh, maybe that's where it happened. Oh, maybe that's where it happened. And then I think the last one, I was like, I think that's where it happened. And he ate one really bad, and you could see him like shaking his arm out kind of slightly afterward, trying not to give a tell. And you got to give credit to these guys, man. I don't think you guys realize how much poker face goes on in these fights. Yeah. Because Alex Caceres was fighting with a snapped arm for 2 rounds, 2 full rounds.
What a dog.
And you probably couldn't even tell because he definitely still threw that left hand. So
talk about a dog.
Dudes are beasts, man. They're absolute beasts. I did think Giga won that fight pretty handedly, though. I thought the real difference was the volume that Alex Caceres tried to put together, and eventually the power that came back from Giga Chikadze. Giga wasn't throwing a lot of combinations, wasn't really putting a lot of things together, was generally throwing one counter at a time. But the counters that were landing had a lot more power behind them. They were knocking back Caceres quite a bit and quite often. Yeah. I think around, I want to say maybe the second round, maybe towards the end of the second round is when Giga started to put more combinations together and actually tried to push forward as opposed to staying stationary and trying to just counter. So it took a little bit of a turn there, but listen, Alex never gave up in that fight, was continuously trying to fight there. You definitely give him credit, but it was...
No, he's the man.
Man, he ate a ton of shit in that fight.
So you want to be an ultimate fighter.
Seriously.
And dude, at featherweight, Giga Chikadze is 6 feet tall. He's so long. He's a big featherweight with these long kicks, and he's just a murderer.
Yeah, dude. And I think the thing that's crazy
guy.
about
Go for it.
The technique behind the way that he throws his kicks, I think, is great because I don't have the hip mobility or the flexibility to throw my kicks like that from that position. Like the man is staying straight and his kicks go whip and they just turn completely over without him even really having to move. Like I have to step to open my hips up so that my kicks go in a proper direction. Like Giga's kicks are disgusting, quick, and very, very difficult to read when you're in there. So he's a problem, man. Real big problem.
So the rankings here. Giga's number 8. He just went up a spot in the UFC rankings. We don't know where he's at in the Prio rankings, which are the only rankings that matter in actuality. That being said, going off of the UFC's rankings, he's, like I said, he's at the 8th spot is Chikadze. What do you think could be next for Giga as he is marching up the top 10 at featherweight?
I think at this point, I don't really know what's going on with this dude. I know he's had a bit of a rough go at this point, but I think a fight with Josh Emmett probably is warranted now. Josh Emmett is still holding a spot towards the top 5 that after 2 losses against 2 really big competitors, the performances themselves, in my opinion, don't warrant a number 6 spot. And so I think this is one of those times where I think he needs to defend his spot. So I think a fight with Giga Chikadze, who has gotten some good momentum at this point. I know he had a loss, not recently. I feel like that maybe it was recently. It feels like it was goddamn forever ago. But Calvin Kattar, yeah, it was just last year, dude. It feels like forever ago. But that's the only fight that he lost. He did lose that one pretty bad. Like he kind of got his ass beat in that fight a little bit. But he looked fantastic in this fight, and he's looked fantastic in pretty much every other fight that he's been in. So maybe a bump in the road doesn't necessarily exclude him at this point from getting something like that, from getting some momentum up. We've seen that since the time Calvin Kattar also kind of got his ass whooped a couple times. And one of those times was to did Josh Emmett beat the shit out of him? Or was that a more... I can't remember how that fight went. I think that fight was more competitive than that.
Who?
Arnold Allen, I thought, was the one that kind of beat him up quite a bit, and he ended up with that knee injury, that weird knee injury. And then Max Holloway obviously also beat the shit out of him.
Wait, who are you talking about?
Calvin Kattar.
Oh, Kattar.
Calvin Kattar.
Yeah.
Yes, but that was all to say. Where the hell did it go now? That was all to say that I think Josh Emmett would be a next good fight for Giga Chikadze.
Featherweight is such a murderer's row. I mean, Volk, Max, Yair, Ortega, Arnold Allen, Topuria. God.
The Topuria one's got me really interested, man. That dude is such a beast that it's going to be really interesting to see what happens.
He has to be a champion of something at some point.
And then if he does become champion, you probably got to give Volk an immediate rematch, I would imagine. But then after that, if he wins again, then what do? You give him Max? I mean, Max... This is probably why Max maybe wants to stay at 145 to see what happens with that belt. But I think if Topuria beats Volkanovski beats Topuria, maybe it is time for Max to go up to 155.
I'd like to see it. I think there are some interesting matchups for Max at 55.
Yeah.
I mean, not everybody going up finds success, as we've talked about. I mean, he already tried once. He fought a lightweight Poirier, and he kind of got handled. I'm not sure that his bout against Khabib would have gone any other way that everybody else tried against Khabib, if you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Who else? Who did we just see? Alex Pereira. He just went up to 205 for the first time. And he didn't quite look like the world beater that he was at 85. And that's a bigger jump. Middleweight to 205. That's a 20-pound jump.
Yeah.
But, yeah, man, some guys are surprised. Like, you go up and wait. It's like, oh, these are some big boys who can absorb some shit.
Yep.
Anyway.
And their shit hurts a lot more.
Yeah. Let's move on. Where are we at now?
I'll match up Caceres real quick, too. So,
do it.
So for Caceres, I was actually thinking Lerone Murphy. Lerone was coming off of a good win off of Josh Coulibaly not too long ago. I can't remember how long ago it was now at this point. Probably like maybe a month or so, but relatively recent. So I think timeline-wise, I'm not sure how long that forearm is going to take to heal. Probably 3 months, I would imagine, 2 or 3 months, maybe 2 months or so. But after that, I think probably the beginning of 2024, I could see Lerone Murphy and Alex Caceres being a good fight.
Cool, man. Okay, moving on. In the women's flyweight division, Erin Blanchfield gets it done over Taila Santos by a unanimous decision. All three judges scored the fight 29-28 for the girl out of New Jersey, Erin Blanchfield. What's her nickname? Cold-blooded. This was I thought it was a very close fight. I was a little worried that Taila Santos might have been running away with it on the scorecards at the beginning of the fight, but Blanchfield, it became a very workmanship kind of fight here. Blanchfield just kind of kept her head down, stuck to the game plan, tried to clinch, tried to grapple when she could, and she did quite a bit. But man, Taila Santos is the type of flyweight who, when she swings, I cringe a little bit. I'm like, damn, this girl throws fastballs. But I was glad to see that Blanchfield got it done and continues to march up these women's flyweight rankings. What did you make of the fight, buddy?
Yeah, I thought it was definitely a a telling performance, right? I thought Erin Blanchfield has looked fantastic across most of her performances, if not all of her performances, but I think this one really showed kind of the opportunities that she really has still in her game, right? Her stand up in general, it leaves a lot to be wanting. The first round I thought was very difficult for her when it came to trying to stop Taila Santos. I think what was interesting though was the real discrepancy I thought was the range fighting. When they're at range, when they're fighting at distance, Taila Santos is good at keeping that distance. Uses her strikes, is very long with them, and didn't really allow Blanchfield a lot of entries in that fight. I think or at least in the first round, she had a couple of takedown attempts in that first round, but Taila Santos is a motherfucker when it comes to those to her takedown defense. She stuffed a good amount of takedowns. She did them really well. There were a couple times where Blanchfield had her hands locked. Still didn't matter. There was one time, it wasn't in the first round, but there was one time in the fight where Blanchfield almost had her completely off of her base and behind her, ready to trip her. Santos found her base again, was able to stop a takedown. I mean, really, really good takedown defense in that fight. Blanchfield showed some opportunities, like I said, in the first round when he came to her striking. The inside striking from Blanchfield, I thought, was a lot more effective. So once they actually got into clinch range, once they got against the cage, once they got kind of in that phone booth range, I thought that's where Blanchfield really shined and showed some more acumen in the striking department. But in the first round, that was very few and far between. Once we got into the second and third round, I think Blanchfield was able to push a pace more. I think Santos started to fade, as she's kind of known to do once we get out of the first and second rounds, especially. But Blanchfield kept the pace, man, and I think that was really what separated that fight once we got into the second and the third round. She never really let Santos like calm down, right? She never really gave her the opportunity to reset a whole hell of a lot, kind of forced her to continue to attack or defend something. So Blanchfield, I thought, did a great job kind of keeping that pace up and taking back that fight, because definitely by the end of that first round, Blanchfield was losing, and I thought she came back beautifully in the second and the third round to win that fight.
And she marches on.
Yep.
Let's keep this thing moving and talk about these women's flyweight rankings. Where do you think Miss Blanchfield is going to go next? The 24-year-old out of New Jersey.
Yeah, so right now, there's two women right now in this division that have not really gotten a shot that make a title shot for them very interesting. And that would be Erin Blanchfield and Manon Fiorot. Manon Fiorot is going to be fighting this weekend, I believe, at in Paris. And we're going to be, yes, she's fighting Rose Namajunas. We're going to be talking about her in a little bit. And then Erin Blanchfield, obviously having just come off of this win, it's hard to deny her a title shot as well. Love to hear Mark's take on this, to be honest, because I don't know at this point if you make Erin Blanchfield and Manon Fiorot fight first for a number one contendership if Manon Fiorot wins this weekend against Rose, or if you just have Erin Blanchfield wait for the winner of Grasso and Shevchenko. There are a couple of, I guess you kind of have to wait to see how everything shakes out. Maybe Manon Fiorot has a terrible performance against Rose Namajunas but still wins, in which case maybe it doesn't make sense anyway, and you let Blanchfield wait for a title shot and see what happens with Shevchenko and Grasso. Maybe Manon Fiorot like spinning back kicks fucking Rose Namajunas in the face and all of a sudden jumps Erin Blanchfield. You know, anything like that could happen. I think it's really close at this point, but Blanchfield and Fiorot, I think, are the ones that are waiting in the wings to get their crack at the title, and I think we have to wait to see what happens before we can really set something in stone.
Okay. I like it. Anything you want to say about Taila Santos?
Yeah. I mean, I was thinking after the fight about her against Chikadze, because I don't think her and Chikadze have fought yet, and they have not. So that might be a good opportunity for her to hopefully look for a win. She's going to have to go through Caitlin Chikadze, I think, at some point, sooner rather than later. But I think that would be a good fight.
All right. Let's move on. Oh, one more fight that we're going to talk about before we kind of lightening the rest of this card. Michal Oleksiejczuk, round 1 TKO over Chidi Bang Bang Njokuani. The official time, this was on the prelims, the official time 4:16 of round number 1. Oh my goodness, what a scrap for 4 minutes. What do you make of it?
Yeah, dude, this one was painful to watch, man, because I think Chidi still is the more technical fighter. I just think he got overrun, man. Oleksiejczuk is a tank. That dude just kept coming forward. He did not care. He got cracked a couple times. He got rocked a couple times. Chidi tried to finish him a couple times, and he just didn't go anywhere, man. And eventually, Oleksiejczuk just kept pressing forward. Eventually, kept throwing shots that found Chidi's chin, made Chidi go on wobbly legs. I think the real... I don't know why Chidi allowed that to go down to the ground the way that it did. Obviously, I think Oleksiejczuk had a lot to do with it, but there was something there was an acceptance there from Chidi that I didn't think was a smart move there. And eventually just got pummeled once he was on the ground towards the end of that round. And Oleksiejczuk wins what I thought really was kind of a comeback, man, because he got lit up quite a few times in that round before the end of that fight. So good on him. I thought it was definitely a good comeback performance. And Chidi drops another one, man. Pretty sad.
It is sad, man. I was fucking bummed with that result. And I was frustrated that he rocked him real bad with that head kick. And then just enough of those blows from when he was trying to swarm him seemed to land on the glove of Oleksiejczuk. But dude, gotta give credit to Oleksiejczuk. He's stealing some of the stardom from Njokuani, and I'm becoming more and more of a fan of Oleksiejczuk in his own right. And dude, this guy's a problem at middleweight. We got to start paying more attention to this guy, Michal. He's no joke, man.
He's not necessarily the most technical fighter, but he is a goddamn brawler. Like the dude,
he's technical enough though.
The dude's gonna fight though. Like even if he's getting, outstruck or kind of put at distance, or like he's just gonna bite down his mouthpiece. He's just gonna come forward, and those dudes are terrifying, very terrifying.
Yes, absolutely. All right, shall we match him up at middleweight, and then we'll go into lightning?
Yeah, honestly, at this point, I think a fight between Oleksiejczuk and Hobocop would be a good one. Both of them have beaten Njokuani at this point. Both of them are now coming off of recent wins, off of recent losses. So I think it'd be a good matchup. I think they're right in the same range as each other. And the way that these guys fight, somebody's probably going to get knocked out again anyway. So,
dude, I forget that I always feel like Hobocop, Gregory Rodriguez, for anybody who is like, who the fuck are they talking about? Gregory Robocop Rodriguez. I feel like he is a 205er. I'm like, that man is massive at middleweight.
He is gigantic.
I felt that way about Njokuani over against Oleksiejczuk. But Oleksiejczuk, he's just such a dog. Gotta love this guy.
But looking at them visually, Chidi did look significantly bigger than Oleksiejczuk.
Yeah, taller and bigger, for sure. Yeah. I mean, maybe Njokuani has been working diligently on his ground game and was like, you know what, I'm going to show off some well-roundedness in this fight because he's pretty long at 185. He's got those long limbs. Let's put him to work on the ground. But the fight went the way it did. So who do you think Oleksiejczuk could fight next at 185 pounds?
We just did that, bud.
Oh, my bad.
It's Chidi. It's Chidi next.
Yeah, do it.
Chidi, I think there's an opportunity for him to fight somebody like a Phil Hawes. It's hard for me to, want to give him anybody that I don't think he could beat at this point. He's got 3 losses in a row. It's not looking good for his UFC career at this point. The momentum has really shifted in his career. He had so much hype coming in. The knockouts were fantastic. Like he looked really kind of like a world beater a little bit when he first came into the UFC. And not so much recently. So I think Phil Hawes kind of has the same downward momentum that I think it would give both of them the opportunity to come out on top and potentially have a good performance against one over the other. But
yeah, probably a matchup in which somebody is going to be going to sleep once again.
Yeah, I would imagine so.
Yeah, one would think. Let us now go into our lightning round. So we could make this a little bit more of a less formal lightning round, just going back between the two of us. Let us begin with in the bantamweight division, back up to the main card. Rinya Nakamura defeats Fernie Garcia by UD. What do you think?
I'm not entirely sure I was supposed to know the depth of Nakamura up until this point, but goddamn, that kid is a beast. Apparently, he's a wrestling champ from that side of the world. Let me get his actual credentials real quick, because his performance I thought was absolutely fantastic, man. He looks like a wrestler when he fights. Like, his stance is very wrestling heavy. The man looks like he's about to shoot on you at any moment, but his ground game is absolutely fantastic. There was one sequence that I had to rewind a couple times where Garcia had ended up trying to put him in a guillotine choke, but never closed his guard, right? So got down to the ground. The guillotine choke was in. I thought it looked like it was under the neck for sure. You could see Nakamura's chin. That was a dangerous position to be in that moment. But his guard was open, right? So in that sense, you had I think his left leg was over Nakamura's hip and back, right? So kind of like if you're like in a missionary position, right? Left leg over, but then his right leg kind of was butterflied underneath the hip of Nakamura. So it's not closed. There's still that opening there where as opposed to both legs over the hips, around the back, where you can even kind of wrap your legs around the back and essentially do something called a close guard. I thought that was a big mistake. I think we've seen that mistake even with what's his name? Was it Poirier and Khabib? I think Poirier talked about how he didn't close his guard against Khabib and he fucked up there. Kind of the same thing. Nakamura had an out. He was able to pop himself out, flip his ass over to side control, and then counter with a Von Flue choke. I mean, I rewound it like 4 times. I thought it was a beautiful, beautiful sequence from Nakamura. The kid's definitely got talent. He's got skills. I think his striking leaves a little bit to be desired, but I think that can come with time, especially if he has the resources and the ability to spend the time to do it. But his wrestling, man, is a real fucking problem.
Yep.
Real problem. He's heavy on top for sure.
Yeah, now 2-0 in the UFC. He looked incredibly strong, showed another dominant performance, completely shutting out his opponent on the scorecards, and he moves on. And he stays perfect overall. He's now 8-0 as a pro. Let's move on to the heavyweight division. Junior Tafa, round 1 knockout over Parker Porter. What do you think?
I mean, he did it in pure Samoan style. I mean, they were banging, they were going at it, and then all of a sudden Junior Tafa lands a nasty punch, puts Parker Porter down on the ground, and just walks away with his hands up like, that's how we do it, baby. That's how we do it. I love the Tafas. I love anybody that comes out of that region because they're just such G's when they knock people out.
They are, dude. They're the kings of the walk-off.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
Yeah, I love walk-offs in MMA. It's pretty great.
Yeah.
Parker Porter has now been knocked out by both Tafa brothers.
Well, it's going to happen.
It's got to be frustrating. Like, God, that family's got, they got my number.
Yeah, dude. Yeah.
Let's see. Another big knockout. Where's this fight? Also in the heavyweight division, that's right. Waldo Cortez Acosta defeats Lucas Bresky by knockout. 301 of round 1. What'd you make of it?
This was a wild little fight up until it ended. There were a lot of calf kicks being thrown back and forth. There were moments where they were counting the amount of leg kicks that were being landed and making fun of Michael Bisping being the count, and they were like 7 leg kicks. Like it was kind of brilliant. I was really enjoying the commentary during that fight. But Acosta did work, man. After eating a lot of leg kicks, he definitely came back and cracked the shit out of Bresky. Bresky's body turned around. I think he tried to run, but his body didn't even know what it was doing anymore. I don't think things were attached anymore. His body just didn't work, man. Ate a couple more shots from behind and landed on his head to be knocked out. It was devastating knockout for sure.
It was a little hard to watch because the way he just like head planted, like running away. It was a highlight that Cortez Acosta will have for the rest of his career. That is for sure.
Yeah.
All right, in the bantamweight division, Garrett Armfield gets it done by TKO, also in the first round. A lot of first-round finishes on this card, especially on the undercard, over Toshiomi Kazama. The official time, 4:16 of round one. I'll go first. Armfield looked great, man. We got to start paying attention to this guy at 135 pounds. He looked dominant. It seemed like everything he was throwing was finding the home. He had great accuracy throughout the night. And eventually what got it done for him was just like a straight 1-2 down the pipe. And Kazama was out of there.
Yeah. Armfield had some really good technique in that fight, throwing 1-2s down the pipe continuously. I'm a big believer in using the fundamentals and kind of sticking to a lot of the basic strikes. I think a lot of people try to get too crazy when a lot of the openings are right there for you if you can just be technical and clean with it. And I think Armfield did that throughout that fight. And I think the referee did a good job. I think I saw a couple things about the referee not allowing that fight to continue more than it should have. I thought that referee did a spectacular job, knowing how much damage that Kazama had taken up to that point, getting knocked down finally after eating all that damage, because to Kazama's credit, he did not go down for a majority of that fight. I think he went down maybe once prior to that, but was eating shit for that whole round. And when he went down the second time, he went down bad. Didn't go out, but he went down bad. And I thought it was a great stoppage from the referee.
Okay. Kenan Song gets it done over Rolando Bedoya by unanimous decision. Song getting back in the win column after dropping back-to-back fights, getting finished both times by Max Griffin and Ian Machado Gary most recently. What do you think?
I thought it was an interesting fight. Bedoya, I thought, took round one. One of the few Peruvian fighters that it's on the UFC roster. But I thought after round one, I didn't see too much coming back from him, man. I thought Song was able to take over after round one. I thought he pushed the pace a little bit more. I thought the momentum was definitely in his favor, and I thought he was getting off just a little bit faster than Bedoya was. I feel like this happened to Bedoya in his last fight too, where he started off strong and then kind of started to fade in the later rounds, and it allowed that fighter to come back, and I think he lost his last fight because of that as well. So I think it was the right decision. The fight wasn't necessarily my favorite fight of the night, but I do think Song won rounds 2 and round 3.
Okay. Moving on, Billy Goff, round 1 TKO over Yusaka Kinoshita. What'd you think?
I thought this was another goddamn banger, man. These guys are going back and forth in this fight. There were so many good knockouts in this fight in this card that the unanimous decision ones, I feel like to a certain extent left everybody wanting a little bit. But I thought Billy Goff did a great job in there, staying in there and knocking out Kinoshita.
That's right. In the women's flyweight division, JJ Aldrich gets it done over Liang Na by TKO in the second round. What'd you make of it?
Yeah, I thought Aldrich's ground game was pretty good. She was able to keep top control for a good amount of time and land some punches. I think once we got to that second round and she was able to get the ground control, I think you could see where Liang had a lot of opportunities, not really knowing how to get up off the ground, not being able to do much from that position, and eventually giving her back completely, getting flattened out, and then kind of getting beat to hell until the referee called it. But I think if Liang's trying to really make any kind of career in the UFC, I think she's got to figure that part of her game out quickly, because there's going to be a lot more girls like JJ Aldrich who are going to take her down on the ground and just abuse her. So,
and dude, not just that, but just the size. Like when these two girls were put up on the graphic at the start of the fight, the tail of the tape rather, I was like, JJ Aldrich looks like she's 2 weight classes bigger than this poor girl.
Yeah.
And sure enough, that's what happened. She just bullied her on the ground.
She did. And I can't, a lot of it, there wasn't a lot of technique though coming from Liang. Like even the size was definitely a thing, but you could see that there wasn't there wasn't a lot of answers coming from Liang, even in attempts that she was making, right? Like a lot of it was trying to muscle things out. There wasn't a lot of technique behind a lot of the decisions that she was making, and you can't muscle somebody who's bigger than you, obviously. So it just didn't really work out for her. And like I said, she's got to work on that part of her game.
Okay, last one in the featherweight division. Choi Sung-woo defeated Jarno Aarons by UD 30-27, 29-28, and 29-28. What would you take us home, Omar?
Yeah, dude. This was actually a pretty good fight, man. This is how the card opened up. I thought Sung-woo Choi. I'm kind of a fan of Sung-woo Choi. He's not a perfect fighter by any stretch of the imagination, but there is something about the way he fights that always makes things exciting, at the very least. And I did think that Choi had won that fight. I thought the second round, if you were going to dispute any round, I thought might have been the second. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that made sense. I think I just said something twice there. It sounded weird once I
picked up what you're putting down.
Anyway, I did think Choi had won that fight. I definitely thought he won round 1. I definitely thought he won round 3. You could definitely give Aaron's round 2 if you wanted to, for sure. And I thought Aaron's made a good accounting of himself, man. I thought this fight was really back and forth. It was very competitive, very close for that matter. But I think in the end, I think Choi definitely won that fight.
Choi very much needed to win that fight, getting back to the win column after losing 3 in a row. He still has a losing record though in the UFC. He's now 4-5 in the UFC. So he's got to keep going if he's going to stick around, because not many guys have the privilege of having a losing UFC record and staying around in the UFC for very long. So
yeah. That
being said, that does it for our coverage of UFC Fight Night, Holloway versus Korean Zombie. Great card. Great Fight Night card overall.